All right, Egypt. Egypt is rising, and as Drake would say,
started from the bottom, now we're here.
yes, so we are now here, and where is here? Well, that's what we're looking at today. So as we've mentioned before, Egypt is broken up into Upper and Lower Egypt. So Lower Egypt, sorry, it's your second part of your sheet, not your first one, but Lower Egypt is also known as the land of papyrus. And it's in the north of Egypt, near the delta. And the crown of Lower Egypt is on your left, and it shows the papyrus and the honeybee. The curled part is supposed to represent a part of the honeybee. And the capital of Lower Egypt was Memphis. Memphis is right there. And then Upper Egypt. Upper Egypt's right here. It's in the south. And Upper Egypt's crown was right here, which was called the Hedjet, which was worn by the white vulture goddess. And speaking of goddesses, since Upper and Lower Egypt were mostly made up more than 3,000 years ago of villages, and each village had its own god and its own animal god, and really started creating these numerous distinct gods that we'll soon start learning about more. But while there was Upper and Lower Egypt, there was definitely conflict between the two. And conflict results in fighting. So you have groups from Upper and Lower Egypt fighting for a fairly long time, until this guy comes along and says, "Stop!" And his name is Narmer. And around 3,200 BCE is when we have unification. So Narmer is a king from Upper Egypt, and he defeats and takes over Lower Egypt. And he takes the crown of Upper Egypt, combines it with the crown of Lower Egypt, and then gets a sweet new crown to wear, and becomes the first king of unified Egypt. And as the first king, this is really the beginning of centralized government in ancient Egypt, and really the beginning of the written history of ancient Egypt. So Narmer, his name is also Menes, Menes. He is the first king of a unified Egypt, and really kicks off a period known as the early Dynasties. And it lasts from 3,150 BCE to 2,686 BC, so about 500 years. And this is really when we first start seeing some good old hieroglyphs. So, as we said, it's the first written history. We also see these things. They're called mastabas, which are tombs. They're essentially flat brick structures, and they become tombs for the rich and wealthy. So early dynasties have this, and the capital of this unified Egypt is up in Lower Egypt in Memphis. So Memphis is its capital. There's certainly a lot that goes on, but we're not going to spend too much time in the early dynasties because we have to go to the Old Kingdom. And the Old Kingdom is really when we start seeing pharaohs. And pharaohs are seen as a living god. So instead of just being a king rules. Kings are great to be. But pharaohs start to become living gods, which is quite powerful a thing to be. And one of the most famous pharaohs that rules from 2,600 to 2,100 is this man here, Djoser. Also, his name is Djoser. Comes in a number of forms. And this is actually a statue of Djoser. It is the oldest life-size Egyptian statue in history. And he's the really earliest pharaoh. And he's significant in a number of ways. He starts to establish mining up in the Sinai Peninsula, so they're going fairly far away from the Nile River. So he starts expanding the reach and power of Egypt, as well as its capabilities of mining and trading. And he also establishes and starts building in the city of Saqqara, and you found this on your Google Quest right here, the Pyramid of Djoser. And it's a step pyramid. So we just seen last slide some mastabas. Essentially, with these, they're the flat structures of bricks, and he just started building one on top of another until he created this, which was his burial tomb. And certainly Djoser as pharaoh was not building this himself. Another famous person from the Old Kingdom is this fella here, Imhotep. And Imhotep had a number of titles. In fact, his official title, and I'll try to do this in one breath, it might be a challenge. If I stop speaking, it's because I have passed out. Imhotep's official title is Chancellor of the King of Egypt, Doctor first in line after the King of Upper Egypt, Administrator of the Great Palace, Hereditary Nobleman, High Priest of Heliopolis, Builder, Chief Carpenter, Chief Sculptor, and Maker of Vases in Chief. So he had many roles, is the gist of his title. So he really was skilled in a number of areas. He was the one who designed that step pyramid. So he has that going for him. And he also has something that's now known as the Edwin Smith Papyrus, and written by Imhotep, or at least attributed to him. And it's really the first time humans have looked at medicine in a way that's not involving magic. And he really starts to look at human conditions, problems that humans are experiencing that need curing. And he starts to figure out, without really attributing it to supernatural causes, and trying to figure out how the body works. So he's really later would be known as a Renaissance man. He's a builder, looks at medicine, he's a priest, and he's the first non-pharaoh to receive divine status. So after his death, he's really seen as a divine person, a divine being, a god. And after Djoser and Imhotep, we come along with the fourth dynasty, which is significant in mostly regards to this, which is the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it was built by a pharaoh named Khufu. Khufu was also responsible for this fella here, the Sphinx. And not only is Khufu building massive structures, he's also expanding the reach of Egypt. He starts sending expeditions south into Nubia, and he's going east into Canaan. So Egypt, where they're building power, they're building structures, and they're building relationships elsewhere in the world. However, all good times are not meant to last. And certainly good times end for a bit for Egypt. And the reason is namely drought. The Nile is wonderful. However, when the rains stop falling, Egypt suffers. So around 2200 BCE, droughts begin. And it really results in a collapse of this unified kingdom. And instead of having one unified kingdom that's ruled by a pharaoh, we start seeing nomarchs. And nomarchs are ruling over places called nomes, and not a gnome that's sitting in your garden that is very short and has a cool hat. Nomes are really small provinces. So if you look at this map, you see the 42 nomes of Egypt, and it's broken up into these separate areas, and essentially you have governors. So these nomarchs are governors that rule over small pieces of Egypt. And it goes that way until the next video, which we'll talk about what happens next.